their meetings. Tonight there's a meeting.
Jill.
P at Gmail. The Scuba Jill P. Gmail.com.
All right.
We got a meeting tonight, and we're going over our for the NAC, and they do Thursday nights. And when you guys have night,
I have a copy of it right here, but if you just like,
So I saw that. We'll see if they respond. I don't know what the trick is. I'm sure other people make changes for calendar years. I mean, you know, we send it to the calendar.
no,
You sent
the fiscal year.
Fiscal
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a difficult thing or not, but basically we're shutting down one and starting a different.
That's why I asked him, do you see any problems with it? What do we
We're
need
going to
be
keep
aware
the
of?
same tax
So anyway, Hey, Daryl. Daryl, just a second. Daryl, when you take pictures, can you get a picture of the Youngest River Kid?
The what? Oh.
The Youngest River Kid. For the newsletter?
many things.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are
Nice
you?
to see you again. How you been?
I've been good.
Good. I'm glad to hear. I'm going to compare keys because I went there and it flat out didn't work, and I know you gave me keys, and I've looked all over the place.
You're in an envelope. What
They were in
envelope?
an envelope, and I've looked all
Did you
over.
go to the right storage unit?
Well, I went to the old one where it was before, and it was the outside lock. Did not work. And I'll compare after the meeting what you have and what I have. But it just did not work. The storage unit is the same place as it was before. We didn't move that storage unit. It was the outside lock I could not get in.
And they gave me a new one for you. It was that, yeah.
I know you gave it to me. I know you put it in there. And it's not in these keys. It's not that key.
It should look like this.
They're going to take mine off. And I'm just going to go here.
Hey, welcome everybody.
They're not the same keys.
Glad you're here today.
Oh.
Same keys. So
Well, I
Mark
don't,
Gary with
I don't
Florida
know what
Traffic
happened.
and
Okay.
Service Coalition Leadership Team. We're glad you're here today. It's a little cool in Stuart, Florida, but thankful for the City of Stuart Chamber for letting us meet here today. Thank you, Commissioner Bruner. We've got wow, we've got a lot of people from the city here today. Wow, 3 commissioners I can see and the staff here today. Why don't we have them introduced? Mike Meyer, Commissioner
Madison.
Madison,
Dave Dias.
Dave Dias,
Ben Romero.
Ben, and
Let's not
Michael.
forget Vice Mayor Bruner here.
Vice Mayor Brenner here in the audience. So thank you very much. Give it up. Yeah, they're awesome. You know, we're very fortunate to live here in the city of Stuart because as you can see on the maps around, you'll see here that we're surrounded by water. And it should be one of the best, cleanest, most beautiful estuaries in the world, actually. And we're gonna make it that way, right? We're fighting for clean water. That's our goal. So we've got a few comments. I'm gonna make a few comments as chair of this meeting, and we've got a couple of new members we wanna bring in. And we wanna get into a short presentation about Lake Okeechobee, and then with the rest of our agenda, which are some important issues and updates of what's going on. So what I want to do first is kind of introduce the members of the Rivers Coalition. So if you're a member, we'll go around. I'd like you to just stand up, say your name and who you represent, and that way we know all the members of the Rivers Coalition. If you look at the bottom of this agenda, we have, and you can read that fine type without glasses. I can credit you with that. So I would have to put my glasses on to read that. We have what, there are 103 members. Okay, so before we get that, we are all going to stand and we're going to face the flag and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me with that. I pledge allegiance
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being in this wonderful country that we have. Cell phones, oh gosh, yes, a little housekeeping logistics. If your cell phone's gonna ring, it's costing $50, so.
Sorry,
That's the
my
way we
fault.
Get donations, make money around.
Mea culpa.
But please silence your cell phones and appreciate all of that. We do have mine. We're going to start here. We'll go around and up down the road here to determine members. I'm Mark Perry. I'm the director of Florida Oceanographic Society.
Jackie Thurlow, the bench with the kids.
Daryl Brown, Tom Cove Yacht Club.
Just stand up.
Daryl Brown, Tom Cove Yacht Club.
Jim Moyer, Marine Resources Council.
George Jones, Orca.
Charles Grandy, President's Council, Hutchinson Island.
Up here in the front. And just stand up.
Marty Long, Indian Riverkeeper. Jim Harder, Stuart Fly Runner.
Dan Barrett, Seagate Harbor Homeowners Association.
Todd Weising, Lighthouse Point homeowners.
Dan's out of Indian River Plantation.
Kenny Hinkle, River Warriors.
Michelle Weiler, Treasure Coast Rowing.
Phil Brothers, I'm so glad to be back in Stuart.
Yes. Any in the second row here? Any other members?
Alan Herskowitz, Sailfish Point, POA.
Third row, back here, any members of the Rivers Coalition for the fourth row? Third row, yeah.
Cheryl Bryson, Adventure Breeze, Mary on Hutchinson Island.
Gail, did you, I'm sorry.
Gail Ryan, I'm a member of River Warriors and I'm queen of Facebook.
She's not standing because of her knees.
Jill Pinkham, Madison Club.
Jackie Transiger, Martin County Conservation Alliance.
Exactly. Well,
Bob Boysenay, Coconut Point Yacht Club.
great.
Bobby and Walter Deemer, Martin County League of Women Voters.
Bob, welcome.
Joanne Swan, St. Lucie Sailing Club.
Next row, go ahead.
Marcy Pitkin, Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Church.
Dennis Fallon, 2780 Catalyst.
Hi, Dennis.
Regina Boyd, Martin County, Florida Native Plant Society.
Linda Grand, American Association of University Women.
Hi, Linda.
Palm Cove, HOA.
Jeanette Hartzell, St. Lucie County League of Women Voters.
Martha Boston, Nettles Island Community Action Association.
Nick Nader, Dolphin Ecology Project and River Kids.
Okay. Next row, anybody in Brewers Coalition members? Next row back, Joe.
Yep.
Claire.
Blair Wickstrom with Florida Sportsman.
Anybody in the long back, in the gallery back there? Yeah, great. Well, thank you, fantastic. We have two new members we want to get to right away to accept. One is the Indian River Plantation POA, and is Kelly Jurgens here? Kelly?
No, I'm here
Oh.
for Caroline. Dan's not the treasurer.
Okay, Dan, well, we have an application that's been filled out and all that seems to be in order. We reviewed it. Do I hear a motion to have them?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept them as a member.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Welcome aboard. Very good.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
we usually have them tell us a little bit about themselves.
Please, come up. Yeah, just say a word.
Just 30 minutes.
Yeah, just.
I was speaking today, okay? Good morning, everybody. This is my first meeting. Callie Jurgens is the president of IRP, which is Indian River Plantation. That's on the Hudson Island. It's actually the Marriott location. People know it as, okay? We have 1,100 condominiums out there. There's about 2,000 people that belong to the POA. We have a very strong showing of people that are very interested in the river. And most of us are unfortunately not here year-round, but the people who are year-round, okay, certainly going to be involved in the coalition full-time. I want to thank you for letting us be part of this, and we'll do our part to make sure that you'll be proud of us, okay? Thanks, folks.
Next, we have the Royal Harbor Homeowners Association. Is James Packer here? Or yes, come on up. His application, or their application's also been looked at and approved by the team. Do I hear a motion to accept them as a new member?
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion? Say aye. Aye. There was no discussion, I guess. We all just went right to aye. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Compared to Indian River, we're pretty itty bitty. We're a small homeowners association in Rocky Point, and 25 voting age members, a couple of youngsters, but we're all voters. We have 16 or 17 docks on the Manatee Pocket, and pretty much everybody is involved in the water. And I think everybody cares about the future of the water here. I've been coming to these meetings for a long time, but I was advised earlier this year that really we should join as an association, because that gives the Rivers Coalition more voting punch, and so that's why we're doing this. And thank you very much for having us.
105 members. That's how long the Kissimmee River is. So before we get into my presentation briefly, we were discussing as a leadership team and the board, and if you recall, this organization was kind of pulled together in 1998, which is 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, we had some major discharge events happening. It was catastrophic, not only to the environment, but our whole economy. So Leon Bood, others of us got together. We really needed to have a group, not just environmentalists, but business people, communities, Chamber of Commerce, realtors, everybody got together and said, we need to do something to fight for clean water and healthy, safe estuary. And so we did. We formed this Rivers Coalition, and groups started to join and become members, and here we are today, 105 people. We also, in 2005, if you recall, set up a legal defense fund. And the reason was we felt we needed to go to litigation and fight. We had 22 plaintiffs lived around the river, and we pulled together a legal defense of the river, which went to the appellate court in Washington, D.C. Carl Wickstrom, myself, Jackie Thurlow, we were up there. Others went to the court appealing. Basically, it came out of the court that the statute of limitations was there. However, Judge Bush, she wrote an extensive order. In that order, she described discreetly how everybody in the Corps and the district has been doing damage to these estuaries for too long of a time, and it shouldn't continue, but due to statute of limitations, she couldn't approve the motion. So we went to appeal. It went to an appeal, and the appeal went to 3 judges. I attended, Jackie, others, and we realized the appeal wasn't going to make it either. But it was a valiant effort, and I think what it did do was to bring about a super amount of awareness about how critical this issue is. It's not just, oh yeah, we got to save this or save that. This is really, really important, and legally, we need to have a standing. So recently, we talked to our legal advisor, attorney is Larry Crary, Crary Buchanan. And Larry's been around since the very beginning. He was the one who originally filed this, put all the papers together and everything for the organization. And discussing with him, he said, you know, what's really needed, we need to have the Rivers Coalition be the 501c3, the entire body. And so this transition is kind of in the works, that we're going to have the entire body of the Rivers Coalition, all the 105 members, as the Rivers Coalition Incorporated, meaning the 501c3. So this will give us more standing, the more definite standing in legal. We'll have the legal strategic committee that'll go on, the Rivers Kids go on, everything, all the programming that we'll do. It just gives us that better standing as a 501c3 corporation for the entire body. And I really appreciate the work on the leadership team of the board and the Rivers Coalition leadership team. There's 12 of us, and I'd like them to stand up and be recognized for their work and going forward. And we're looking right to the future in January here to get forward. So please stand up. Blair, you're here on the board. Yeah, we're missing Mike Connor, I believe. Ted Guy is not here, and Chris Maroney couldn't make it. So we have 3 more members, but I think they've really spent a lot of time pulling together, and we're all gonna, what's going to be exciting is we won't have a meeting in December because it's Christmas holiday. And basically we want to have our next meeting in January 24th, to be our kind of history wrap up. So Larry Crary will come, Leanna Booth, maybe Bud Jordan, Kevin Henderson, some of the early kind of founders. And Daryl and I, with others, we've talked about putting together a little history of the coalition and what's been going on over the years, and what are our next steps? What are we going to do in the future? How can we take this 105 really powerful, voice and get going, especially with new leadership in our state and new leadership in our Congress. And we really need to get the pressure on and get these things done. And we've shown that we can do that. So I'm going to get started with kind of my presentation, and we'll hear more about it. Yes, Stuart.
I'll interrupt for just 1 minute. Mark gave everybody a lot of compliments, and well-deserved is the compliment that he should get. The work that he's put together. With the defense fund is providing. The 2 of them working together are what's really putting this together.
All right, enough accolades. All of you deserve accolades. I mean, your organization is really what makes it powerful together. And we have a statement as powerful, representing over 300,000 people, I believe. That's amazing. And the political leadership listens, and people listen. The local governments, everybody listening to what Rivers Coalition has to say. So I've got the arduous task of telling you about Lake Okeechobee regulations. What a boring subject, right? But I'm going to do it briefly, and I'm going to kind of go through real quickly what's going on, because what's exciting is the recent legislation that got passed by Congress, the WRDA bill, has in it that one of the things is that the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule review was part of the WRDA bill that got passed. Not just the EA's storage reservoir south, but the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule review. So what was in here was a small paragraph that says that the Assistant Secretary of the Army should expedite that review and reschedule of the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule for coinciding with the repair of Herbert Dock, which we really appreciate, and I think that that's going to start kicking off. I talked to Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Reynolds yesterday, and she's saying that the public meeting she told me that would start in maybe January are going to be in February, and so we might have her come back, explain, and give us an opportunity to have public input to the new schedule. This interim schedule was basically 2008 is what is up there, and you'll hear it referred to as WARS 2008, right? So the 2008 Imagine, that's 10 years ago. It was supposed to be an interim schedule. Those of us that have been around for a while, we've seen schedules on Lake Okeechobee, Run 25, WSC. Every couple of years, they might change this schedule. And it all comes from a master water control plan. And you're gonna kind of learn a little bit about that. And I'm not gonna give you every page of these massive documents, but as you can see, the tabs, I've been through a few of them, and they're really interesting to read, but they're the guidance that the Corps is using, and the Water Management District, in order to control or not the discharges that are coming to us. So next slide, I don't have a clicker, so Barbara's gonna do the slides. As you know, this is the current flow, the historical flow on the right, and the current flow. How did we get here? We basically wanted to drain the swamp, get rid of the water. It was flooding our areas, and we wanted to do that. There were 2 hurricanes, 26 and 28, that came across, and also the 1947 flooding, which created the Herbert Hoover Dike around the lake, stopped that flow to the south. They re-engineered the St. Lucie Canal. The Caloosahatchee could be those big arrows of major outlets, but also these other outlets that basically go to tide instead of going down south to the Everglades and Rivergrass. You've heard me describe that it used to take 6 or 8 months to get to the Lake Okeechobee, and about another 16 months, that slow flow to the south. That used to take a long time to get down there. What we did to drain the swamp and to get rid of it has created other activities like agriculture south of the lake, other kind of things around these canals to become not just flood control, but also for flood control and water supply and redirecting water for other purposes. So the main body of the master water control plan is for flood control and other purposes, which include navigation and other things. So a lot of things that are tied in. Of course, as population increase along the lower east coast of Florida, they also use those canals, just like we use our local canals to discharge water. Next slide, please. So I want you to memorize all these numbers and what's happening there. But basically, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use this twice, and you'll see it again. But this was from just this last week or so, and the Corps puts this out about every week or so. And we have a weekly periodic science call. And we all get on and we go over all the system around the lake, including north of the lake. And you'll see to determine how much water is coming in and how much water is going out and where it's going. What I want you to focus on are right there, Lake Okeechobee, 13.5 feet. To the east of that, there's S308. That's Port Mayaca, S308. That's the structure that the Corps regulates, along with S80, which is about 20 miles downstream, what we know is the St. Lucie Lockett Dam. That's S80. So they control that. The next one down is C10A, which goes through the LA Canal. And that is also controlled by the Corps of Engineers. And then across it on the other side is S77 at Moorhaven. Now these are relative numbers, and it goes down to S78 and S79. So they have a longer stream, the Caloosahatchee, and they usually take about twice as much discharge as we take on the East Coast in general. So in this case, they were getting about 1,000 CFS. We were only getting 38 CFS. And as you know, as the lakes come down, we've been able to discharge. But it also shows the water conservation areas. And I know you can't see it very well, but up in the upper left corner, there's the water conservation area 1A, 2A, and 3A. And that schedule is 17.5, 12.3, and 10.707 are where the levels, compared to sea level, where the water levels should be. What's next to it is where it is. So this currently, S3A, is at 9.8. So it's below its schedule. So they can put more water in. When it gets above its schedule, it gets flooded, they can't put water down there, okay? So the water conservation areas have what we call a schedule also, just like the lake has. And they try to regulate how much water comes out of the lake to that. And what you're gonna see is the very minimal amount actually comes from the lake to there compared to other runoff that comes into the water conservation areas. And most of it goes east and west. Next slide, please.
Mark, would you like
Yep.
a vision for you?
Oh, gosh, do you have one? Sure. That will. We get these from here. Okay, so real quickly, that's Lake. Here's the canal, built 1960 to 1926. It was improved after they built the 1937, completed the dike. They improved this outlet, tying right into the South Fork. As you've heard me talk, the North and South Fork, 20 miles north, 10 miles south, This was the natural flood, natural watershed for the St. Lucie out to the inlet, but then it had been improved by adding these conditions on here, C23, C24, C25 up to the north, all of that, and C44, as you can see around is citrus. So a lot of citrus growing required these drainage into these canals. And they built these back when they didn't know how much impact was happening. But we know better now, and we need to curtail not only the lake discharges, but also the discharges from our local watershed, which is now inclusive of all these canals. Next slide, please. So here's the lake. Here's the lake level, and this is starting back in January all the way through November 13th. So this was the lake level back then. In January, it was pretty high. It dropped down, as you can see, to during the dry season. But in mid-May is when we got a lot of rain. I shouldn't use this. Drunk too much coffee. You're all trying to follow this little route. So I just described. Thank you, though. So you saw how it dropped down, and then during the wet season, we got this huge rain events and storms coming in. So the lake jumped up to almost, the high level there of about 14.5 feet. And then it kept going up. And as it goes up, in that dashed line in the middle is where they get really critically wanting to manage and say, oh my gosh, we got to get rid of water, got to get rid of water. Well, they started those discharges. We went up to 1,800 CFS, 2,500 CFS, and almost double that over on the West Coast. So we were almost up to 7,000 cubic feet a second going out, trying to get this lake under control as it was rising, because of course they're concerned if it gets above that intermediate zone, then we're going to get too much. Now I want you to notice the high, intermediate, and low, and base flow and beneficial use. These are what are described in the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule. And I'm going to show you how that ties into this, but the squiggly lines are all previous years. You can see 2017, it was way down there and then jumped way up during the storms, of course, the hurricanes. And things can happen pretty quickly in the lake. But as you've heard Paul Gray and others, we try to get the lake managed between about 12 and 15 feet or so, because that's an ideal for the littoral zones in the lake, and it won't drown the lake. You can't drown the lake, it'll kill all the submerged vegetation. At the same time, you can't get it too low for too long, otherwise that will be harmful too. So next slide. So how did this all start? Yeah, I'm gonna read those documents, not really. So this is 1948, the Flood Control Act, 1948, June 30, 1948. This act was passed. It's known as the Rivers and Harbors Act or the Flood Control Act. What I'm just showing you here are the 2 pages. Because what it does under flood control is go, this boxed area, you can read very fine print, I know, central and southern Florida. So they had about 15 of these river areas or flood control areas that the Corps put forward, saying we need to have some projects and some controls within these for flood control in these areas. They included the Arkansas rivers, they included Mississippi, there are about 15 of them. So I just took the page and hewed out where the central and southern Florida. And real briefly, it says the project of the Caloosahatchee River and Lake Okeechobee drainage areas, Florida, authorized by the River and Harbor Act of July 30, 1930. So that goes back even 18 years before this. As amended, is hereby modified and expanded to include the first phase, the comprehensive plan for flood control and other purposes in the central and southern Florida as recommended by the Chief of Engineers in House Document Number 643. And the 80th Congress, subject to the conditions of local cooperation, $16 million. Well, that's not a big appropriation back then, but for then it probably was. So when you think of, you say, okay, well that's it? That's this water control. Well, let's go to the next slide. So now you see what House document, this is House document 643. Now back then what they did is they took all the chief's reports, all the information from the Department of Interior, everybody weighed in, transmittal, even the local governor at the time transmitted into this document. And this is what Congress actually votes on to say, okay, we passed the act, and this House document 643 becomes a part of it. And I'm not going to go into all the outline here, but it's pretty full of basically all the different things that are going on in the system, and at the end, the recommendations of what they do about it. And basically, they come up with a water control plan that's going to control the elevations in the lake and other canals for flood purposes primarily, but also for agriculture and other purposes. So it's pretty well defined in there, and it's about a 52 or so page document. And we can make copies available or something. It took me a while, it was an interesting sidelight to find this. It's not readily available. So University of Florida, though, has an excellent archives area. So I finally got down to them, and they said, oh yeah, we think we might be able to find that. Within the day, they came up with this document. And she said, would you like me to send it to you? So it came in 2 volumes. I said, absolutely, I'd love to read it. So that's what came down the pipe. Next slide, please. So what resulted from that is what we call the Central and Southern Florida Project Water Control Plan for Lake Okeechobee and Everglades Agricultural Area, otherwise known as the Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule. Now, it's a water control plan, and what they did there was about 7 volumes in what we call the Master Water Control Plan for all of these projects in South Florida. Our water control plan that affects us is this Lake Okeechobee and Everglades Agricultural Area. It's tied together under this Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule. Remember you talking about WSE or Run 25? It's all been different schedules in the history leading up to this one. So next slide, please. So I'm not going to make you read this either, but we'll have it on the website. But it's the notice to users is just describing in that first paragraph that this is a chapter, or will become a chapter in the Master Water Control Manual for Lake Okeechobee and Everglades Agricultural Area. And it goes on to say the Water Control Plan general objectives and the purpose is to make decisions, a process to consider how Lake Okeechobee and the Okeechobee Waterway and Everglades Ag Area are managed water levels for flood control, navigation, water supply, for agriculture, irrigation, municipals and industry, Everglades National Park, regional groundwater control, salinity control, enhancement of fish and wildlife, recreation. And all of those are why the purposes and objectives. And I didn't duplicate other pages in here, but it's a really interesting document. What I'm going to go to now are actually the end of the parts. There's A, B, C, and D, which are the charts that they graphically describe how they make decisions week to week on what discharges they're going to do. So next slide. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. So remember those high management area, intermediate, low. We're going to start to see how that comes together. So this is part A. So part A says, okay, we're going to have a